90+% of the contractors are struggling to fill their open positions. We know that there is quite a bit of turnover in the construction industry. And so what can be done to ensure that the time being spent by that person that is in charge of hiring is best well spent? How are you making sure that they are able to have the time to interact with employees, as well as getting all their very critical job roles done? With new technology comes change. People inherently are not happy with change. So a good change management process is important. To be able to all come together and say, what did we learn? What can we do differently? What's the next step? We want to make sure we're keeping those individuals that are making such a big impact on the industry working and highly satisfied within the construction industry.
Expert advice, practical tips, real-life stories. Have less stress, more time, and more money in your business. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor.
Mike, you just told me that you don't have a client on, and you know what the biggest tell was for me that I already knew that?
That I hadn't brought it up?
No. Actually, that's a pretty good one. No, it's that you're wearing your Patagonia pullover.
Oh, no. Well, this isn't a pullover, it's a zip.
It's a
No,
full zip,
he's not
full
in
zip.
the oil business, so I can wear Patagonia.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, you don't want to wear Patagonia. I went up to Canton in Oklahoma, which out-of-state people won't know, but it's as we say in Oklahoma, it's a rural community.
I don't know I know Canton, Texas. I don't know Canton, Oklahoma.
Oh yeah, no, northwest Oklahoma. It's oil field. And
Okay.
we were on our way quail hunting, and I was with a guy who's into oil business. He had to stop and meet a guy, and I walked into the cafe wearing my Patagonia. And I walked back out because I was with influencers, right? But I might not have. They don't. They
You
don't
might
like
not have if they
Patagonia.
weren't with you.
Yeah.
That's
They
great.
might not have liked them.
Hmm.
But you got to ask
Well,
me what I did this weekend,
what did you do this
and
weekend?
apologize to our guests here. But
Yeah, Carrie,
went-
we will get to you at some point.
yeah, we'll get to you. This is where Khalil and I catch up. We don't see each other all week, and I went to my college reunion.
Oh, that's right. I knew this. Okay, how did it go?
No,
50
number
year?
50.
Wow.
And our age doesn't really, I mean, I don't worry about it, but we were talking, and I go, 50 years, man. Yeah, no, it was great. Yeah, we met up with, really haven't lost too many friends, and the ones who were there are good health. And it's just like it was yesterday, bizarre.
Wow.
But anyway, kind of a landmark. I don't think I'll make
Yeah.
the next 50. I mean, maybe, maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Hopefully not. I hope
Yeah.
not for your sake. Well, let's shift gears. Usually I have a fairly good segue. I don't know how to segue out of this, but I guess we have a fellow Oklahoman here.
Here we
Yes.
go.
Carrie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. I'm coming to you from Tulsa.
Yeah, the better part of Oklahoma in my mind. I don't know how other people feel. I love Tulsa. I would move there if I didn't have to leave so much great community that I have down here in Norman. But yeah, thanks for joining the show. So we're going to be talking about HR, hiring, managing people. But before we get into the HR side of that, I always love to hear from our guests, especially the ones that are in software, whatever it is, how they got to where they are. So can you give us a little bit of your background and how you got to where you're at?
And I'd like to say
Absolutely.
this is Carrie Gardenhire.
Yes.
Yes.
I already said
Intimate,
Carrie. My fault.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. So I started my career as a project manager and really focused primarily on technology. So I was a project manager for Texas Instruments, as well as several other large corporations, but it just migrated that skill set of project management in a technology and software world. And then from there, really got more involved in marketing and social media, as well as operations. So I'm a very process-oriented person. So inherently, that had a lot of ops related to it. And I was doing a lot of the hiring and employee development within some of the smaller organizations that I was with. And then I got into the software space with a company here in Tulsa and was really focused on operationally how can we improve our processes so that we can get more out of each employee. And with that came the opportunity with Arcoro. So, really working on helping construction firms to develop their employees and hire their employees. And now I manage our partnerships with different construction associations to really help to engage with our customers as well as build new customers. So, telling the stories, telling the opportunities that contractors have seen with using technology for their employee data. But really, when it comes down to it, my heart has always been in construction. My grandfather was a general contractor in Fayetteville, not too far away from us. My uncles in Kansas and Arizona have also been contractors. So I've seen the progression of the contract firm, whether it be from when he started it, when my grandfather started his in the 1950s to where it is today, with some of my uncles' opportunities in Kansas and the role of women in construction in those different organizations, but the different things that they've had to manage, whether it comes from regulations or people leaving and not being longtime employees, or their longtime employees now retiring, and how are they going to backfill those roles? So it has both been a professional journey as well as a personal journey with a lot of my family members.
Very interesting that it's back in your family background. You went into software, but now you're kind of back into the construction space with software.
Exactly.
I'm curious. So you said that you're managing partnerships with associations, and this is something that I talk with some contractors, smaller contractors about frequently, is the value of being in an association. And so I'd like from your perspective as kind of like maybe a middleman or an outsider,
Yeah.
what is the difference between, working with maybe a client who is a part of associations versus isn't, or what is just your perspective on associations for contractors?
Absolutely. I think construction associations are a huge value to contractors. They really bring the most important resources, as well as advocacy front and center for those contractors. It allows the contractors to really focus on their building and their work and be a resource to them when they need more information on where can I get OSHA training, from my local chapter for my team members, where can I get discounts on technology or different services? They're coming to their association for that, or whether it's getting training. I want my HR professional to network with other HR professionals, have them join the HR committee. Also, associations are offering a lot of sponsorship for apprenticeship programs. So, in the workforce development realm, it gives the contractors the opportunity to get engaged with that new wave of workforce very early on. So, as a supporter of associations, we're typically called an affiliate or associate member. We're always focused on how can we provide value to those members. So how can we work with the mission of the association to help provide value, whether that be in a webinar on prevailing wage or different things that they're having to deal with, or new hiring tactics, or new ways to hire the next generation of the workforce. Or it might be offering a special discount to those association members. So things that they wouldn't be able to just go out and perhaps even have the time to investigate everything on their own. The associations are working very diligently to screen companies like Arcoro, to look at the whole landscape and say who is offering the best proven solution for contractors. And that's who we partner with. So we put a lot of value in those strategic partnerships that we have with CFMA, Construction Financial Management Association, or with ABC, Associated Builders and Contractors, or AGC, the Association of General Contractors of America. So we're really working hard on making sure that we're bringing that value and helping the association in their mission to bring those resources front and center to their
Right.
contractor members.
Yeah, I think there's a there's just a difference in viewing a company who's a part of association and one who's not. You can tell who has a lot more of their admin side kind of ironed out and organized, who is really
Yeah.
just connected in the industry and has, can refer to different people, or I notice whenever I work with a client who is a part of association and I ask for a referral, they actually have like a pretty good referral list, right? If we've done a good job, they're ready to refer. And it's usually to people that are in that association with them. I think for a lot of contractors out there that aren't in an association, we've on the show, we've definitely mentioned ASA, American Subcontractors Association, and ABC, American
Mhm.
Builders What does the C stand for?
Association of Builders and Contractors.
Association of Builder Contractors,
Associated
correct.
Builders and Contractors. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've mentioned those. Those are great ones. Do you have any others, Carrie?
Yes, absolutely. So Associated General Contractors of America, that's AGC. They have some great local chapters as well. They usually identify their chapters as vertical or horizontal. So the building chapters versus the heavy highway chapters. So
Okay.
that really allows those contractors to find their niche. Also NAWIC, so National Association of Women in Construction.
Mm,
It's a great organization that really helps to build leaders within organizations and help to overcome. We only have about 10% of the construction workforce as female. And so looking for opportunities to grow and develop women in construction, as well as to help them to advocate outside the industry and bring more women into the construction industry. We also work with NECA, the National Electrical Contractors Association, which is about 95% union based. So, working with those local IBEW chapters. And they do a lot of advocacy in DC, as well as helping those contractors that are having both union and non union labor. Perhaps their office staff is non union, or some of their project managers are non union, things like that. So they have different needs when it comes to HR software. So we do a lot with those union based associations on things like they've called the hull and they need to have more workers, more journeymen perhaps in the field, allowing them the technology to quickly get them started with our kiosk mode. So without having to
mm,
have an email or a phone number, they can easily get that person on the job and working with just a matter of a few hours without a ton of paperwork and losing time on the job. So um, let's see. We have also worked with ASA, like you mentioned. And then we also work with some other union based associations like MCAA, the Mechanical Contractor Association, or SHMACNA, which is the sheet metal association that's focused
mm,
primarily on union labor within sheet metal. So, or those contractors that are MEP, so mechanical, electrical,
yeah.
plumbing contractors.
Yeah, and the National Women's Roofer Association, they're pretty cool. They're active here in
Yes,
Oklahoma City.
Yeah,
they are. Yeah.
absolutely.
So I think there's so many associations out there. I think the point is, we can move on from that in a second, but I think it is worth mentioning to the contractors out there, especially as you're growing and you're trying to figure a lot of things out. You can speed up or accelerate your learning process and your development process as a business owner and as a contractor by joining an association that has valuable resources, that has guidance, that has people that are ready to provide you with insights that have already been where you are currently. And you also get the advocacy piece, which is huge. And I don't want to understate how important that is, that the laws that govern and regulate construction are directly impact your business, whether you are aware of it or not. And so those are great things that are associations. If you're not in one, join one. If you are in one, make sure that you show up to the meetings and don't just say that you're a part of it, because there's value in it.
Absolutely.
So we'll
And
move
I would
on from that.
advocate for
Oh,
being, oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I would advocate for being part of committees and boards on these
Mm,
associations, because that's really to add on to what you were saying about advocacy, being able to really have your voice heard and being a part of the leadership or the committees within those associations really amplifies your voice and helps you to solve some of your challenges within your firm.
yeah.
What
You
we
get
all
out what you put in.
frequently say about people is, especially when they're starting, they don't know what they don't know. It's a truism.
Mm,
An association is a great place to find out what you don't know, and
Mhm.
then right there at the same time, be able to do something about that. It's like they can be like a giant perpetual mastermind, you know. And then
yeah.
they vet people like Carrie's company. So anyway,
No, that's a good point. And speaking of like things that you don't know what you don't know, I want to get into the hiring aspect of the things that we don't know. I think Martin and I know quite a bit, but I know we're going to learn a bit from you. I can only imagine what our audience is going to gain from hearing about this. So remember, I know that you're probably working with, very, very large construction companies that are maybe global, but even I think what would be valuable for our audience is understanding how to go from that like step one of I'm by myself all the way to the point I've got maybe 100 employees and what the differences are there and how I can really have what I need to know about HR. So let's just start with what are the biggest missing pieces you see from the smaller construction companies when it comes to HR?
Yes, absolutely. So I think having a standard hiring process, as well as the tools and technology to be able to manage that process so that it's not an overhead burden. We know that there is quite a bit of turnover in the construction industry. And so, what can be done to ensure that the time being spent by that person and the organization that is in charge of hiring is best well spent? And that person may wear several hats. They may also be the person that's issuing payroll, the person that's responsible for getting everyone enrolled in their benefits. Oh, by the way, recruiting. Oh, by the way, also performance management. So, how are you making sure that they are able to have the time to interact with the employees, as well as getting all their very critical job roles done? So, what we see a lot in contractors is that it becomes overwhelming. And so we have a modular software. So we have some contractors that start off with us as timekeeping. They are currently using paper timesheets. And there's quite a bit of manual effort to process payroll and decipher everyone's handwriting and get the manager's approval on all those hours, as well as process payroll. And oh, by the way, we now need to hire, we just got awarded a new job and we need to hire a handful of additional tradespersons. So, really being able to have the technology to rely upon so that you can, at the click of a button, be able to bring a new hire on and give them the same experience that you gave someone else 2 weeks ago through using that a workflow with technology to deliver all that paperwork that they need to sign, or the employee handbook that they need to sign, or the safety video that they need to do, and making sure that all of those are getting done.
Really quickly, do you provide the workflow or you use their workflow and adapt it to your software?
So it's really configurable. We have best practices. So we have some standard workflows that, we use as a starting point. But then as part of the implementation process, it's really understanding what the contractor is currently doing and what they like about what they're doing and how they want to continue doing it. But then also adapting it. So it's both. It's flexible as well as providing some out of the box best practices.
So I want to kind of walk through what I typically see, and maybe you can point out some of the uh, inefficiencies in the current hiring process. So I just spoke with someone last week, asked them how they're hiring. This guy probably hired. It's fairly seasonal. Um, it slows down quite a bit for 2 months in the winter, but uh, for the most part, hiring 1 to 2 people per month, right? Because there's turnover, because they're growing, because stuff picks up in the summer. So we'll just say on average hiring 1 to 2 people per month. What he does currently, he's got some chat GPT generated job descriptions. He posts those on Indeed, and sometimes he'll make a Facebook post about it. And then they on Indeed will click the apply button, and then he basically gets to look at them on Indeed. It's not really any sort of application, just kind of here's the contact information and a resume, but most of them don't have resumes. He ends up calling them, and if they do well on the phone call for 5 or 10 minutes, they do an interview. Um, let's assume it goes well, they're hired, and then they start the next week or day, whatever it is, and go on the job. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I missed there. Um, they don't get an email. They don't get an account in their software jobber for project management. They get paid through Gusto. is how they do their payroll, and they don't have any benefits like health or anything like that. They do get paid time off after they've worked there for 6 months. They get 1 week vacation. Um, that's it. So well, sure, that is probably effective in getting something done. There's a lot of missing pieces, but also a lot that a lot of risk in what I just mentioned. So
Yes.
maybe let's start like at that front end job description. Like where can software help here?
Oh, great question. So from a job description standpoint, being able to have something at the ready that you're using over and over again and being able to quickly update it. And so that when you're distributing those job descriptions, you're going wide. So with an applicant tracking system, you're not just logging into Indeed and posting that post. It is distributing those jobs out to multiple job boards. So we distribute out to Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Indeed, of course, and several others, as well as construction specific job boards. Or, for instance, if you're doing a federal job, you need to make sure that you're showing that you're distributing out to a wide net and that you're recruiting from a diverse workforce. So making sure you're recruiting from veterans, making sure you're recruiting from other places that are allowing you to touch base on a wide variety of demographics and firmographics. So that's one thing. And I think primarily from the job description, I would really evaluate from a chat GPT standpoint, how true is that to the work that is actually being done on the job site? So perhaps having stay interviews with some of the employees that have been hired through those job descriptions to simply take 10, 15
Mm.
minutes. How true is this to what you're actually doing on the job site? So that
Can
you
you
can make
can you
adjustments.
give us a little bit more in depth? What is a stay interview?
Yeah, absolutely. So a stay interview, many of us, if we're able to, will do exit interviews when someone's leaving the organization. Maybe talking to them about their experience, why they're leaving, things that you wish you had known many months before or many days before. So, what a stay interview is, I've heard some HR professionals talk about doing stay interviews 6 months after the hire is on board. Some of them do it with their top performers annually. Really integrating stay interviews can be things where you can understand of all the different things you're providing to your employees, all the things that you think are important, a turkey at Thanksgiving, certain benefits, certain PTO levels, having them tell you back what is it that is most important to them with being a part of your organization. Is it the culture? Is it the lunch that you get to have each year around Christmas or the holidays? What is it that is really helping those employees to understand why they stay? And then incorporating that back into your job description. So I think I've even heard you talk on your podcast about it's not so much about listing all the duties that you have to do on a job, but what's the value? Oh, I get paid every Thursday? Awesome. I'm
Yeah.
going to make sure that I'm including getting paid every Thursday in my job description or a very high level, a very high in that large PDF of that job description. So it's really getting that feedback so you're not wasting your time using the same non-qualified or non-appetizing, it's not great marketing. It's helping you to find those keywords, those key phrases that um, got you the people that you want and make sure that they're staying with you.
Mm. Yeah, this is well, one, Omar and I are honored that you've listened to our podcast.
Yeah.
It's very rare that we get to meet someone who actually
And a
listens and
shout
turns it.
out to Mike Soto too, who is the
Yeah,
one who realized that instead of 10,
yeah,
these are the things I hated. So I fixed them all. I said, well, tell them that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a
yeah.
good idea.
Well,
That's
and
a good idea.
that gets to my point, or something I always harp on is you have a job description, but you have a job posting, And I think the job description is something internal that you use to evaluate employees, manage them, be able to do your performance reviews and see, are you meeting these responsibilities? Do you have these traits day to day, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But the
Mhm.
job posting is what we're talking about here of like, hey, are we hitting the keywords and phrases that people are searching for? Are we hitting the
Yeah,
values that they actually care about? Are we hitting the things that actually make people want to stay here? Um, and having those job postings is a very, very valuable. And obviously it takes some legwork to get those things developed, but once you do have them in place, you're hiring for not the same roles always, but very similar roles that you can use that
absolutely.
information across the board.
How
And
do
I
you
think I
actually
wanted to
use I'm sorry.
No, please,
Well, I was
Martin.
just gonna ask, how do you actually use technology to accomplish what we're talking about?
Okay,
Well,
thanks for
she
asking.
mentioned
I was
the
actually
ATS, right? The
Yeah.
applicant tracking system allows you to
Okay,
put the posts inside of the applicant tracking system,
into a
and
lot of
then
places.
sends it
Mhm.
to a lot of places. But when they apply, they all come back into the applicant tracking system, so you don't have to go into Indeed and then Monster and then wherever to see who all's there. They all come into one funnel. Is that right?
That's right, and so you're able to look at them all in one place. You're also able to tag applicants so you can know that this person, has this skill set or what have you, so you're building your bench. It may not You may be only hiring for one particular position for one particular skill set, but you want to keep people because 'cause you're like, "Man, I've actually got 3 candidates, but I only have one job function to fill." So you're able to tag those candidates. Another thing with technology is you can ask qualifying questions. So while they're coming all from one funnel, when you click apply on Indeed, or you're actually applying within the applicant tracking system, and you can ask questions. So maybe that's a qualifying skill question. Maybe that's something about years of experience, or have you done a certain type of work? You can ask those qualifying questions early on in the process without having to have someone that's calling or evaluating every single resume and interpreting how it's written on that resume. And then through that, if someone doesn't meet those qualifying questions, you can have canned emails that allow you to use information from that application to say, "Thank you, John. I'm sorry, but based on this information, you do not qualify for our job, but please stay tuned to click here, our career page for re, you know, additional opportunities in the future." So there's ways to build efficiencies around the qualification of candidates, as well as making sure that you have that one central repository for those candidates in the future. So you can nurture those. Maybe you send out an employee newsletter and you send out a version to those that bench. And you're able to make sure that they are staying in tune with, wow, this is really a company I want to pay attention to. Look at all the cool things they're doing at their employee
Yeah.
picnic, things like that. So with with that technology, you're able to kind of have that single source where all of your applicants come from. You're also able to say, "Oh, wait, this is that person that's applied to every single job that we've posted, and they're not going to qualify." You're also
Mhm.
able to manage your interview process. So through the system, you can say, "Supervisor X, please evaluate this candidate and send me your information back on what you thought of that person via this system." So you have it all in one place.
So this is great, and I think a point I want to hit on for this, for the ATS and the things you mentioned, like following up with employees with a rejection if they don't fit, following up with the time to schedule really quickly, uh, being able to tag them for future communications and future job posts, whatever it is, and then also doing the qualifying. This is all about really, in my opinion, a user experience, right? And it's really important because just like you probably care about what's on your website because you want customers to feel a certain way when they engage with your company and with your brand, all of these applicants are engaging with your company and they're getting an experience. And if you give them a really poor experience, it's less likely that they're going to want to be a part of that company, that they're going to treat your company seriously whenever you do an interview. But if you handle it extremely professionally, if you give them reasons to believe that this is a great place to work at, not only are they going to be more bought into the interview process, into starting the job on day one. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that have hired and then they don't show up for the actual first day. But also, whenever a friend is thinking about a job, even if they don't work for you, but their friend's like, "Man, I need to apply. Hey, you should check out this company." because they had such a great experience. And so if you have that great user experience because you are organized, because you're detailed, because you are responsive using an ATS, you're going to get better applicants down the road. It's only going to, become a flywheel that grows and grows and grows for your company. So really great points. My only question is, this seems like a full-time job. So what is it like for the contractor that's got 8 employees? Is it feasible for them to implement this ATS on their own? What roles do you see actually managing the ATS? Is it full-time HR person, or is it just an office manager? What's practical for that 8-person construction company that is hiring maybe 6 roles a year? What do you recommend?
Absolutely. So it's definitely not for everyone. We see that contractors that are anywhere from 30 to 50 employees, that's kind of the threshold, especially once you get up to 50 employees, because then you're having to look at really digging into your employee data, FMLA, ACA compliance, things like that. That's when those tools and being able to have a centralized place for your hiring and employee data is really important. When we're working with contractors with, say, like you mentioned, 8 to say 20, 30, 40 employees, we're talking to them more about electronic timekeeping. So using an app to help with clocking in and clocking out, helping with attribution for, I spent this much time on carpentry, or I spent this much time on this job, so that you can easily estimate
Yeah.
out future jobs, but also making sure you're not getting time theft. So for a company of, say, 40 employees, if they have employees that are saying they're working 8 hours a day, but they're actually only working 7 hours and 40 minutes a day, over a year, that's almost $50,000 of time theft. So being
Yeah.
able to not just have a clipboard with a piece of paper or someone clocking everyone in at one time, but having an application where someone clocks in, clocks out, you're able to tell them where to go for each day via a scheduling tool. All of that may be more appropriate for helping to build efficiencies within HR with a timekeeping solution versus an applicant tracking system for an 8-person contracting firm.
Yeah. But your
Yeah.
module, you can add the ATS later on as you grow into it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's not a start-stop portion. We have some people that just come in and say, I want the learning management solution. I need an online solution to deliver coursework to my employees, or I just need a performance management solution. So it can be modular.
Yeah. Okay, so that ATS is really important. It kind of covers that first part of what I typically see. Let's jump to, and I'm sure the ATS helps with some of the onboarding, or is that a different module?
There is an additional module, but the great part about it is the information that's captured in the applicant tracking system transfers over to the ATS. So you're
Okay.
able to take some of that valuable data and then be able to kick off the solution within the ATS, and
Mm,
perhaps even
okay.
send a text to say, click here to complete your paperwork before your start date or on your start date.
Okay. So can you help our audience understand what a really good onboarding process is? Like what should really be happening? Okay, I've got this field tech. He's starting on, Monday next week.
Mhm.
What should that experience be like on Monday?
Absolutely. So on Monday, they should be able to come in, and perhaps it's simple as having the onboarding documentation in Spanish or in French. So that, and by having an electronic system, you're able, well, with Arcoro, you could have someone enter their information with the labels on the forms that they're filling out on a laptop or an iPad be in Spanish, but then when the HR person is looking at it, it's back in English,
Yeah.
whatever's needed there. So that's one way of helping them to feel comfortable and that their employer understands what helps to work for them. I would also say getting that information captured. So it's not just about the address and all of those items, but not having to enter it multiple times. So in one place, you're capturing that key contact information, and that you're not having to do it again on Form 4 and again on Form 8 and again on
Like when
Form
I go to the
7.
doctor's office and you know, I'm putting in my first name and my birthday on every single form I fill out. Yeah, I
Exactly.
gotcha. So
So that's an
really quick though, what are the documents that would be included on that onboarding documentation?
Absolutely. So it would be key contact information, emergency contact information, as well as the payment, say direct deposit information.
Mhm.
And then there would also be the verification of the work documents. So within that, you can have the manager, they can upload an image of their passport or their driver's license or identification card. And then within that, the manager can log in, look at examples from, say, Oklahoma, and say, this is what a valid Oklahoma driver's license looks like. They've also done that verification in person, and then they're able to check that box internally. So there's some workflow things. You could
Okay,
also do
so
things
whenever
around,
I sign up, really sorry, whenever I
no.
sign up, I don't have any of this stuff. I just grab it. They send me an email with their information. I put it in. I just file the email, and that's not really great for storage. I don't. I'm the only person that can access it. Whenever I sign up for a software like this, are they going to give me all of these documents that I need to fill out, or do I need to go and create all these forms? How does that work?
So there would be a step. We would be creating, say, here's the best practice to get you set up. But there would be, as part of implementation, a back and forth where we're gathering a lot of that information from the contractor to say, how are you doing this today? What are the processes that you're using today? And then helping to fit that with what the system can do. And also
Mm.
provide them opportunities. Well, did you know that you can also give everyone, show them along the way? They're on step 4 of 6, so they understand how many more things they have to do. There's additional things like you can create forms or surveys where you might ask their shirt size, what's your favorite ice cream, what do you like for your birthday, different things that might help with those culture items to help with retention, so that you know that if you're going to give everybody new shirts or different things like that, you have all that information gathered as part of the onboarding process.
Okay, yeah, it's all the things that you don't think about that often. And let's say you're hiring once every other month, and then you just bring someone on. It's what you kind of gather over time, maybe, but you could get it all on day one and be more organized, be more diligent and intentional about how you keep documentation organized, but also how you approach the relationship with the employee in terms of, celebrating their birthday or getting them a t-shirt or a hat or whatever it is. So, okay.
Absolutely. And then you're able to report off that data. It's not all in
Mm.
manila folders in a file cabinet. We have what we call an electronic file cabinet so that you can quickly aggregate that and say, I need to order t-shirts. How many larges do I need? Okay. Well, these are all the surveys that we have in, and I'm not having to use all of that time that it would take to go through paperwork to find out how many larges do I need to order or what have you,
Yeah.
or how many
I
employee,
think,
we're
yeah,
getting an
I think it's
employee
important.
address list.
I think it's important for our audience to understand that a lot of this stuff it's necessary and but it's necessary for running the business properly. It's not necessary for it's not going to help you dig holes faster. But when the shovel breaks and snaps somebody's leg or whatever happens, having this information in a place that everybody can access it on your team or whoever needs to on your team, it's going to save you a lot of time, signing contracts and employment agreements. All that stuff is going to be really helpful whenever things don't go the way as planned. You need this stuff in place, right? So, um, anyways, just something to
Yeah,
note.
I think it's likely that if you want to replace everybody's T-shirt and you have 50 people and don't have the sizes, what will happen is you will not do it.
Yeah,
If you say,
Yeah.
"Oh, pull that up," uh, and I mean that's the difference. It happens or it doesn't happen.
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And then also being able to, all the extra questions that might come through. What if somebody has a baby? What if somebody changes addresses? What if someone gets married and they need to add a spouse onto their healthcare as well? All of that takes time. And in being able to have, say, an employee portal that integrates with your accounting system or ERP system to be able to have that employee be able to log in and download their payroll stub because they're applying for a loan, or they need to change their benefits midway through the year, those types of things, and giving them access to what all that is, where you would normally get someone drop by your door and say, hey, I need this real quick, or send an email or a phone call. Those are the types of things that can take up hundreds of hours for that
Yeah.
operations professional or the HR professional or the payroll professional, that or someone that's wearing all three of those hats, to really help them to be able to be more efficient with their time.
Yeah, I think that employee managed aspect is huge because especially as an owner who's probably taking over some of these things and maybe having some support from someone in the office, just having a portal, hey, you have a question about payroll, benefits, address change, new member of the family, even can you update your shirt size? I'm sure something like, like those little questions can pull you completely out of what you're normally doing day to day. And so if you're able to say, hey, everything's in this portal, here's your login. There's a video in there that shows you how to find what you need to find. Go for it. Manage it yourself. I think that's extremely valuable and that's where the efficiency can really kick into, where you're not getting all the questions randomly. It's in the portal.
We may not have talked about everything that can be done, but I mean, hiring and the ATS and payroll and communication within the company, contribution to culture, and there may be more. What, where do you see the pushback? I mean, it all sounds great. And the guy goes, well, I'm not doing it. Or do they ever actually just say that, or they just don't do it? But where
Yeah.
is the pushback? What do you have to overcome? I don't want to say convince, but to have people decide they want to do this and it's worthwhile.
Absolutely. So, with new technology comes change. People inherently are not happy with change. So, a good change management process is important. I have one customer in Ohio who they are a prefab steel company. So, they had a lot of folks on, they bought applicant tracking and onboarding as well as exact time. So, the time and attendance solution. So, they had the biggest problem with time theft. And so they started with implementing exact time first and they integrated it with their ERP. And one thing that they found was being able to go on the floor and talk to the individuals, the steel workers who were working on the prefab work. And one thing really resonated. One gentleman who was older in his career said, so this means that the guys that come in and sign in for their buddy that's still on their way in, that guy's not going to get paid for that hour that he wasn't really here. And it was like, yeah, that guy's not going to get paid because they didn't actually clock themselves in. Their buddy clocked them in an hour before they got there. They're like, oh, okay, good, because that guy really makes me frustrated that he's not getting as many hours on the floor that I'm having to do, but yet he's clocked in and he's getting paid for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So helping to make it relational to where they are and what frustrations they have. You might find that out in a stay interview. um,
Mhm.
so being able to understand, yes, this is going to overcome that frustration. And that same customer, because they put iPads in their prefab facility for people clocking in and clocking out, they were also able to put design files on there instead of spending lots of money on those printouts that they also had to keep. So they used that as an additional resource and kind of changed the culture. But pausing, and we do that as part of our implementation process, is really helping our customers with that change management. So change management is super important. And it's not easy, especially with a company that's not used to using technology for some of these employee-based processes.
Yeah.
On listeners, the smaller guys, do you say, hey, let's start with module one?
Mhm. Yeah.
Right?
And it's
Or
not
and
sequential.
probably time tracking. I would imagine that's where most of the
Yeah.
game is. But
Absolutely. And then seeing how they can gain efficiencies
yeah,
or cost savings.
Yeah. I think with a couple things with the time management piece, I know a lot of people have salaried project managers or whatever, and they're not tracking time. I do think it is valuable to track time regardless of salary or hourly, because it does allow you to find the inefficiencies, or why are you spending so much time on this when we really need to be spending time here? And just it allows you to understand where the outputs are going, or where the inputs are going inside of your business. But back to your change management process, I've never heard that term, but I love that, because I think I've always said like 90% of software is behavior change more than technology and, the technical aspects. It's just changing a behavior. And something as simple of having to clock in on a phone when you never clocked in before it's a behavior change. It's a habit. So having a process for managing that change and really instilling that behavior is really valuable. You've mentioned the implementation piece, which is crucial. I think a lot of people are used to self sign-on softwares. They purchase the software, but then they never do anything with it because it wasn't actually implemented properly and specifically to their business. What does that look like for you? What do you guys do for implementation? And is that included with what you pay for the software? Is it an additional fee
Mhm.
on top of it? What does that look like?
Absolutely. So we use what we call the adopt methodology, and really, it's a tried and true way to work with the contractor on gathering information, helping them to have a project plan as to what that implementation is going to look like, what's expected of them. Because it's not just us implementing the software. Oftentimes, we're needing to gather data from their current business or their current employees and make sure that that's available to input into the system. So, of course, with software purchases, you have different levels. So, if some, in the sense that someone might buy 4 modules or 5 modules, and so their implementation is going to look a bit different than someone that maybe
Mhm.
just has exact time for timekeeping for just a smaller number of employees. So there is varying levels of support there. We have a very large support team and support resources as well. So if it is more of a smaller contractor that is implementing the time solution, they would get support on getting it set up, making sure that they have all their employee data in, and that they're successfully being able to track time, and it is associated with all their different job sites and the geofencing and all of that. And they understand how to pull the reports out of it. Now, if they're implementing a integration with, say, QuickBooks, and they want to get all that or all that timekeeping information into QuickBooks, there's another, set of implementation things that they might need to do to make sure that we're connecting it correctly with QuickBooks. I would say probably some of the applicant tracking and time tracking, the exact time solution, are probably some of the quicker implementations. Once you get
Mhm.
into the implementation that you're doing, say you're using Sage 100 or Sage 300 CRE or CMIC, some of those larger ERPs, those might take maybe up to 60 days, 90 days to just make sure that all of that information is tested and flows. So there's really a couple parts, like you mentioned, of implementation. It's the data gathering, it's the implementation and setup, there's the change management, and then the testing to make sure all that information is working well.
Okay. So I think we understand the value of software. As you're really small, probably not, you don't maybe have the time and energy and capacity to focus on it. But there's still ways to get started, even with something as simple as time tracking, and then modularly grow into it.
Mhm.
I want to kind of go back to even just hiring and the challenges of hiring that a lot of people are facing. And you have probably a really good pulse, probably much better than Martin and I. We talk to individuals and know the different use cases and where they're at currently with hiring. What what are the challenges that you're seeing in the construction industry with just employees in general? Is it harder to keep people? Is it harder to find people? What's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really starts with finding people. So we know that 90+% of the contractors are struggling to fill their open positions. So, but
Do you
what
know like what
really,
kind of positions?
it really ranges because you're having both um, tradespersons. It really depends. And then you also have project managers, especially, and then project supervisors or foremen, people that have to be away from their families for many days on end at a project site, like you're mentioning Martin and in Northwest Oklahoma, when they
Mhm.
live maybe in Oklahoma City and they're having to be on a job site for several months.
Yeah.
You're not always finding that unicorn of the folks with 5 to 10 years experience. They've managed a crew. They understand your particular vertical or your specialty contractor. People are just not finding those unicorns anymore. And so that again leads to keeping the right people. So we've talked a little bit about culture and the importance for both recruiting and retention. But really, to come back to your question, I think that being able to make sure that contractors are able to use systems that then distribute their jobs out, find the right people. Also, another important part is an employee referral program. So, word of mouth is one of the greatest ways to find additional workforce that might be similar to those that are successful within your organization. So, how do you manage your employee referral program? Another thing that can be done in the applicant tracking system. So, how did that person come in? And we find that individuals that are coming in via an employee referral program are having the most staying power. So, how are you structuring that employee referral program? Maybe it is a small bonus when the person starts, and then another small bonus when they've stayed 6 months or a year.
Mhm.
Um, or
I don't know if this applies directly, but and I can't remember our guest who it's employee dream management, which sounds a little corny when you say it that way, but what do employees want, and does the company know that? And it's different. I mean, one person maybe just wants money, somebody wants time off. Had a guy that his whole goal in life was to buy a house because his girl wouldn't marry him till he did it or till he had the down payment. I mean, I don't know how you can exactly software helps with that, but if there were a way to capture what people wanted and then you can design things in the retention. I'm not leaving because these guys get it and these guys are providing and they're speaking into my dreams. I don't know if software can exactly do that, but it would be magnificent if it did.
well, there is a component that we use called performance management. So it's that module of being able to do, say, annual performance evaluations or documenting stay interviews, or it might be every 6 months. So we're seeing that the younger generation that's coming into through our survey, that the younger generation coming into the construction workforce are wanting career paths. They're wanting to know that there are opportunities for them to grow within this organization. So one way to do that is through performance evaluations. Or it might be a project evaluation, a postmortem on a project. To be able to all come together and say, what did we learn? What could we do differently? What's the next steps? But being able to have that with your employees, especially those that you want to grow within the organization on a regular basis, document that in their performance management so they can go back and look back and say, oh, here's the steps. Here's my goals. Here's what I need to do to make myself go to that next level within the organization. And then making sure that perhaps they have a sponsor or a mentor within the organization that's helping them to find those opportunities, because it really is a team sport. It's not just about their manager, it's being able to understand where they might be able to have some good sponsorship within the organization. Because we all know in construction, you have certain jobs. Maybe that job is not allowing for you to give someone that experience that they need to go forward within their career path. So, what are other alternatives? Maybe it's finding professional development opportunities within your local association or young professionals committees, things like that. but what can you do to look back at that documented performance evaluation and career path to help them be successful and know that they have the opportunities within your organization?
Yeah. I think if I'm listening to this episode, I think that I'm seeing a lot of areas that I can improve as just a manager and hiring manager. Uh, and I'm realizing that there's a lot that I don't have in place probably, and that I need to. And I think the same way that your software approaches adding these things into a business, you need to just approach it modularly, right? So don't
Yeah.
try to figure all this out on day one. Figure out what's something I can do to better manage the employees I currently have and keep them. I would start there. And so implementing a process where there is a performance review somewhat regularly, maybe doing some stay interviews and just building relationships with the current employees I have. Then as I start to have to hire different roles, implementing different pieces like an ATS, like better job description, job postings, like a better onboarding process for those employees is probably the best way to do it. But the next time that you go into hiring someone, don't just use the exact same process you used the last time. Try to improve upon that as you go. And maybe that's when it makes sense to start to get on board with some of these software solutions or these modules. But at least start having a conversation with a company like yours, Arcoro, that can help you get to that point where you need to be down the road. So I think that's probably the most valuable. Martin, do you have something?
The coolest thing I wrote down that I'm going to be using today was stay interview. Okay.
Yes.
Which is not a performance evaluation.
Mm.
Nope. It's a stay interview. That was really cool. I will be using it today. I have other quick questions I'll throw out. One, having done this yesterday with a client, do you make use of and think they are valuable an org chart?
So tell me again what you mean by the org chart
Organizational
question.
chart.
The way I use an organizational chart with my clients is that we use it to make it's by position and not by people, by function and not people. Our listeners will know that we talk about the 4 functions of business, but make sure that we have a box for every vital function, okay, within the business. And that is a place where we begin to accumulate job descriptions, job duties, responsibilities. Also shows who's managing whom, but that's not even its principal thing. Once we have that design for what our company looks like when it's, quote, finished, which never happens, but that's the idea. It's not the way it is today. It's the way you want it to be. Then it's your map for hiring and filling in, right?
Mhm.
So that's how we use org charts. And the people who use them really love them. It's a map. You can look on it and go, this is where I'm spending all my time. I would get the biggest bang for my buck if I hired somebody to replace me, the owner, doing this position, as opposed to the trouble of the day. Sometimes I got to hire somebody to do this. Well, not if we think about it. We'd be better off. So I don't know. Did that
Yeah.
explain?
It does. When I think about solving some of the workforce challenges, I can see an org chart being helpful with recruiting in order to be able to show individuals that are not currently in the construction workforce or just entering the construction workforce, maybe as apprenticeship or through trade schools, that there is a career path. So you might see yourself as starting at the bottom of the org chart, but here's the opportunities that you would have to work your way up within the organization. Here's the skill set that you would need to have in order to progress. You need to add this function or you need to add this responsibility to be able to continue to move your way up within the organization. Um, I think also being able to know where those mentorship opportunities might be. So for those individuals that might be higher up in the org chart, where they might be able to help within their silo of the org chart to bring that workforce up, because you might want to look at your org chart and be able to say, well, how close are some of these really key boxes getting ready to retire? And what are we going to do from a hiring plan to replace them? Who are, succession planning? Who are we going to be training up? So by utilizing, again, our performance management solution, you can do succession planning And so it's very similar to 9-box. Are you familiar with 9-boxing?
I'm not.
So 9-boxing is looking at putting 9 boxes where you're looking at performance versus potential. One axis is performance and one axis is potential. And so you're
Okay.
able to say, okay, this person might be lower in the org chart, but their potential is very high. And their performance with their current role is pretty decent. So we're going to put them on a career path or a succession plan to help identify maybe that box that's going to be free pretty soon due to attrition, due to retirement, or due to someone else moving up within the organization. So it can help, I think, to identify those potential pitfalls that you might have in the future. Like, hey, we're going to have a problem here and we need to be hiring and making a plan for either recruitment or succession planning for that role or that function.
Yeah. That's really cool. I'm gonna have to look at 9-boxing. I really like
Yeah.
that. The potential
Yeah.
versus
And that's not
performance.
specific to the construction industry. I've used
Sure,
9-boxing
sure.
within software as well, but
I've
it's
never heard of it. Cool.
Yeah.
yeah.
Learned stuff.
My last question that we can leave on. Arcoro is specific to construction. There are other HR softwares that have a lot of these solutions. Like I know Paycom, I know Gusto, I know um, several others. What's great about Arcoro from a construction perspective, and why should I choose it over some of these other more generic business solutions?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you asked. So, we have an in-house product team and based here in the US, and all they're doing is making sure that we can satisfy the needs of the contractor when it comes to things like prevailing wage, certified payroll, interfacing with their existing construction-based systems. We interface our exact time information with Procore. So sending that information back and forth, making sure that the systems that they're using for their accounting and finance, we are connecting with so that that data can talk to each other. We're also making sure that we are hearing from contractors in the industry. So my role in associations is extremely important so that as we're building our product roadmap, we're making sure that we're emphasizing and focusing our product team on those things that the construction worker needs, because it can be very different in manufacturing. It can be very different in different types of roles when you're managing a large number of employees. So we're not a one size fits all. But we are one that's specific to those needs of the construction firm. We also have over 8,000 customers that are in construction. So we're able to give more comparable evaluations of how a construction company is using our system, the best practices that they're looking at, the training that they're using specific to a fellow contractor. But really, it comes down to the features and functionality and also the reporting. So being able to do the OSHA audit reporting and the different reporting that are needed specifically within construction for OFCC audits and different audits, all of that information is gathered in a way so that it can be reported on for those audits and reports that are needed for the construction firms.
Mm. Yeah, I think, you know, it's not like you're this tiny construction software company, which I don't always advise companies to use because there's not the resources there to develop the product to really make sure that even though it is specific to being a painter or being maybe just a remodeler, it's not going to have the resources and the attention that it needs to make it a great product. But this is a big company that is focused on construction, that's understands your business, that understands your challenges, your needs, and the industry as a whole, that's involved in associations and constantly listening to contractors, building great products for them, and then trying to serve them at a high capacity. You're going to be able to have a lot more value in that when purchasing it versus buying a out of the box solution like Gusto or Paycom, et cetera, et cetera. So highly advise it. We'll put a link to Arcoro down in the show notes. We really appreciate you joining
Thank
us
you.
for the podcast, Carrie. Martin, anything you have that you want to leave with?
No, just thanks again. It was great.
Yeah.
Well, I
No,
sure
really
appreciate your
valuable.
time, and absolutely. And I think, we can all work together to solve some of these workforce challenges and help contractors to focus more on the building that they're doing, and let the people items be really focused on recruitment and retention. We want to make sure we're keeping those individuals that are making such a big impact on the industry working and highly satisfied within the construction industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for all the insights, Carrie. Great talking to you. And yeah, talk to you soon.
All right.
you,
Take
ma'am.
care. Thank you both.
Thanks for tuning in to the Cash Flow Contractor. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Visit thecashflowcontractor.com. See you next episode.